it works, right? It's restored, but it's not the same as the original condition. So a lot of those programs are actually are towards restoring. They're also patchy in their distribution. For example, the Clean Water Act is based on individual organisms and their life history strategies. So species that have very small ranges, right? That's where that's limited to. It's not a comprehensive national program or legislation, and I think that's what we need to protect the science.
All right, thanks very much for that. Let me yield to Senator Capito.
Oh, thank you. Thank you both, or all three of you, for being here. So the Biden administration has come in and revised the rule as a reaction to the Sackett opinion. And the Supreme Court found unanimously that, for different reasons, that the mere presence of water does not allow for federal jurisdictions. So they have removed the phrase significant nexus from the rule and kind of called it a day. So, Ms. Bodine, would you describe the jurisprudence here, and am I right that mere deletions cannot satisfy the requirements that were laid out by our Supreme Court?
Thank you, Senator Capito. I'm concerned because, and I agree with you, and the reason is that when the Biden administration wrote their rule in January, knowing full well that the Sackett decision was pending, they hedged their bets, and so they wrote both on significant nexus and relatively permanent waters, but they didn't put the definitions of what they meant, going to Senator Carper's clarity point, they did not put it in rule language. They, I think, attempted to isolate it from judicial review by putting all of that in preamble language. So when they issued their conforming rule on September 7th, they excised significant nexus out of the rule language, but they left in all of their preamble language about what is that related to the Rapanos test. What is a relatively permanent connection? What does it mean to be relatively permanent? What is a continuous surface connection? All that's still there. And they affirmed in a memo that they wrote on September 27th that that is controlling. So that January 23 language from the preamble is controlling the jurisdictional determinations in the field.
So I would say simplify there. What I'm hearing is that we're going to be back at court, and this is going to be back up to the Supreme Court the way the administration has rewritten this rule. Would that be a safe statement?
Yes, I agree with you.
Okay, let me ask you this. I talked about the rulemaking process, and they kind of skirted a little bit the rules there in terms of public input, which is kind of ironic because in this committee, all we hear about is community input and how we need to make sure we're listening to community, which I believe is extremely valuable, and we should be doing that, and that's a big emphasis. But they didn't go through this. How is that going to hold up as we move forward legally here?
I was very surprised they took that approach. There is an exemption in the Administrative Procedure Act saying that if comment is unnecessary, then you don't need to go through notice and comment. But the only time comment is unnecessary is if Congress took away all the discretion from the agencies. If there's any discretion, then you have to take notice and comment. And there certainly is, there are certainly questions that remain open based on the Sackett decision. In fact, there's a whole discussion about interstate waters in the Sackett decision that they didn't address at all. And then, of course, there's this whole issue of how they're going to implement it, which is in the preamble language.
Well, I think, too, also to get to it, and I think, we have, as much as we might have a different approach to what we're trying to get here, one of the conforming themes, I think, that the chairman and I have, and all of us have, is some kind of consistency. Mm-hmm. So if we look at this map, we've got the purple and the green. The purple is conforming to the 2015 rule. The green is to the new rule. I mean, how in the world are farmers or construction, anything, going to go forward trying to figure this maze of regulatory mishmash? To me, that is makes it even more difficult than it already is.
I agree with you completely, and the reason is that the way they wrote the rule, again, not by creating definitions that could be challenged in court, but by essentially leaving everything to a case-by-case determination. And so those case-by-case determinations about how they're going to implement stuff on the ground, that is going to lead to inconsistency. And we have seen that before. There's a really interesting 2004 GAO report on how different core districts around the country took completely different interpretations. And we're going to be back to that.
And then just to simplify it in regular terms, the whole Sackett case was about a couple trying to build a house near a lake. I mean, so it is very granular. We're talking kind of big, bold definitions and how it's going to implement and everything. But basically, it's about homeowners, construction folks, farmers. It's the basic parts of our different states that are most deeply affected. So I think I'm out of time, and I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chair.